Happy Sabbath. We're just glad to greet you all to our worship service this morning in the Klamath Basin. And I'm Jim Osborne, for those of you who don't know. We're hoping, and we'll let you know as soon as we know, to open up our churches in this area soon, under, of course, a lot of restrictions, but we'll certainly be happy to see one another, even if we're wearing masks. It's just good to be together soon. And I have a big thank you from Leslie Rogers. She's asked that we just thank the church for all their love, their care, their cards, flowers, and everything in the loss of Clyde. And so we want to continue to pray for Leslie and her family, and just ask God's blessing and His comfort for them. And each week, except for last week, I think, Melody, my wife, has been sharing bouquets. And I think she said this is the last week that you want to come and share this with us.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. Our churches are starting to open up now, so this will be our last COVID bouquet. So this small bouquet is to say a big thank you to everyone who's working so hard behind the scenes to help our churches open up.
All right, thank you. I invite you to where you are, close your eyes, and I'm going to kneel as we ask God's blessing on this service. Father in heaven, we are grateful that you've provided that special day each week for us to spend with you. And normally we spend it with one another also. We look forward to the time soon when we'll be able to just be together again. And we ask that your Spirit will be with us today as we worship you together and apart. We're thankful for all the people that pray for each other, call each other, care for each other in the way that we can. And so we ask for your blessing on each one today in Jesus' name. We're going to hear again from Ed Whitlock, but this time Brent is with us, and we're just thankful for that. Ed and Brent.
This song takes me back to a time when I first realized that Christ was living within me, and it really was like seeing the world for the first time. It's called Sunrise. Needing the Lord is like seeing the sunrise, watching the darkness fade away. Knowing the Lord is like walking in sunshine, the warmth chases the coldness away. Loving the Lord is like seeing the world for the first time in your life. Yes, loving the Lord is like seeing the world through sunrise. Sharing the word is like giving the starlight. Always brings a gratefully night. Accepting the word is like looking out on a clear night.
trying in my mind to harmonize the words and the message of that song with what we're dealing with in our world today. And it's so good to know that in the midst of all the chaos in our world, that we can have that kind of peace and that kind of comfort and fresh new life. Servanthood in the time of the end. A friend sent me a link to a Facebook message this last week. And when I first watched it, I thought, can you believe all this stuff? And I still have the question in my mind. But this person was talking about a governor in our country who delivered a message about contact tracing and how technology aids in contact tracing. People who have been in the presence of someone who has or is suspected of having the COVID virus. And there was talk about quarantining families and how easy that's getting to be to follow up and come to families' homes. And if the family can't be quarantined together, these were statements that were played by this person from the government. That there will be facilities available to care for children. Some things that are just kind of scary to me. They say they have 1,371 well-trained people to facilitate this kind of training, of tracing. And that can be scary in our world today. Luke 21, and verse 26 talks about men's hearts failing them for fear. We're living in a world of fear. People either fear the virus or they fear the government. What can we do about that kind of fear? How do we live in a world of fear? Do we become politically active? Do we become hermits? Do we become survivalists and stock up on plenty of ammunition to protect ourselves? Do we join a militia? Luke chapter 12, verses 23 through 34 is a whole section that just says, don't worry. Verse 32 says, do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Don't worry about people. Psalm 118, verse 6 says, the Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Verse 8 says, it is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. I think we're learning that. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. When Joshua became the leader in Israel, he recognized his inability to do the job that God had given him. But God told him, be strong and be of good courage. I think he would say that to us today too. Be strong, be of good courage. Do not fear or be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, he is the one who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Don't worry about people. Don't worry about food. Don't worry about clothing. Jesus said all of those things. Luke chapter 12, verse 29 says, do not seek what you should eat or what you should drink, nor have an anxious mind. Don't have an anxious mind. You know, it's easier to be calm when you're with your protector. I remember as a little kid walking at dusk through the woods in northern Idaho with my daddy. And I'm asking about wolves out there. I was sure that I was seeing some shadows move or something out there in the trees. But you know, as long as I had my daddy, as long as I could hang on to his hand, I was okay. As long as we have the relationship with God that Ed was describing in the psalm this morning, we can be calm in the midst of all of this mess that's going on in our world. Jesus told several stories along with some signs of his second coming to illustrate what our attitude should be prior to his return to earth. Matthew 24, I think, and 25, many of us are familiar with. Jesus' signs of his coming, and then he tells some stories related to that. Luke chapter 12 does the same thing, shares a lot of those things, well, some different stories actually, but one of the stories that is the same is about the faithful and the unfaithful servant. But before we go to the faithful and unfaithful servant, I'd like to start with story 1, which is found in Luke chapter 12, verses 35 to 40. Jesus says, well, before I read that, you'll remember, I think a while back we talked about the 10 bridesmaids, and they were waiting for a wedding. This is a wedding story again. Be dressed for service, and keep your lamps burning, as though you were waiting for your master to return from the wedding feast. Then you will be ready to open the door. So this is talking about someone who's actually in the house, not someone waiting outside. Then you will be ready to open the door and let him in the moment he arrives and knocks. The servants who are ready and waiting for his return will be rewarded. I tell you the truth, he himself will seat them, put on an apron, and serve them as they sit and eat. For some reason, that parable had escaped me before. He may come in the middle of the night or just before dawn, but whenever he comes, he will reward the servants who are ready. We'll come back to that story in a little bit. Luke chapter 12, verses 42 through 46 is the faithful and unfaithful servant story. And the Lord replied, a faithful, sensible servant is one to whom the master can give responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. If the master returns and finds that the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. But what if the servant thinks, my master won't be back for a while? And he begins beating the other servants, partying, getting drunk. The master will return unannounced and unexpected, and he will cut the servant in pieces and banish him with the unfaithful. I don't think we'll dwell on that very long. But that was a manner of punishment. It wasn't just decapitating, it was just slicing people up. There's a big difference in what happens to the faithful and the unfaithful servants. Like I say, we won't dwell too much on the unfaithful one, except to say that he's beating the other servants. And I don't suppose in our church families we have too many physical sometimes we have some tongue lashings and some beatings like that. We don't take care of each other like we should. We do the things that seem to bring us pleasure, and we're not concerned about the return of the master. This servant that he's talking about, however, seems to be the pastor or religious leader, someone who people look up to for spiritual food, for instruction. But we'll talk about that in a moment too. Luke 21, verse 28 says, "Now when these things begin to happen," he's talking about the signs of the times, "look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." When we see the things that are happening around us today, pestilence is one of those things. The virus is one of those things. Wars and rumors, all those things that we've talked about for years, those of us who've looked for Jesus coming to be soon. He's talking about those things, but he doesn't say go around mourning. He says lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing nigh. We can be joyful in spite of these things. These are exciting and disturbing times for us. And we keep hearing a phrase, the new normal. We don't want the new normal. If this is what it's going to be, we want to go back to the old normal. That was much more comfortable, right? We may have to live with a new normal in some way. I believe that we will before Jesus comes. This world is not our home, like the song says. We're just passing through here. Most people are much more comfortable with the old normal. So what should members of the Master's household do? Panic? That doesn't help. Luke 12, 42 and 43 says, "And the Lord said, Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his master will make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes." There is an urgency. There's an urgency to be alert to what's happening in our world. Lift up your heads. There's a reason for him saying that, because we are coming to the end of the world as we know it. Lift up your heads, because the same Jesus who healed the sick, the same Jesus who comforted the mourning, the same Jesus who cared for people's felt needs as well as their unfelt needs, is the one who's about ready to come back and take his people home. So, how do we live in the meantime? Are pastors and religious leaders the only servants? No. Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12, Ephesians 4 talk about spiritual gifts. Gifts that are given by the Holy Spirit for serving one another and for serving the world. Romans 12, verses 3 through 5 says, "For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than you ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, but all the members do not have the same function, so we, being many, are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. You may have a spiritual leader, but every person in God's household has a special gift to serve one another and to serve those outside of the body, because He wants to call more people to him before he comes. We won't focus, as I said, on the unfaithful servant today, just to know that in the light of the times in which we live, and the urgency to watch and be ready, the golden rule to care for one another doesn't change. The things that we've talked about for years as far as our devotion to Christ, our commitment to Jesus, our care for one another is still the same. It doesn't change. In fact, it becomes more important as we approach Jesus' second coming. I'd just like to go back, before we close, to the first story in Luke that we talked about. He says, be dressed for service. I think the King James, the New King James says to gird up your waist. In those days, men wore robes, and when they decided to get busy and do something, they would gather up the robes around their waist. They were girding themselves to do something. He says, get dressed to be busy. Do something. Be dressed for service. Service to one another. The servants who are ready and waiting, he says, for his return will be rewarded. Ready and waiting. Be aware of the things that are going on around. There are scary things happening in our world today. The whole world shut down because of a bug. And yet, God says you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be worried. Just keep serving one another and stay close to Jesus. The servants are ready and waiting. But the thing that struck me is that he himself, this is talking about the Master, this is talking about God. He himself will seat them. He will seat them, you and me. God is serving us. He will seat them, put on an apron, and serve them as they sit and eat. Our God, who says he made us in his image, and he's recreating us in his image, and life is like facing a new day again in his presence. That God who created the world for us is the one who will sit down and serve us. And as we become more like him, we will become more servant and service-oriented. It's in his nature, and it becomes our nature. And speaking of his people, Israel, Zephaniah 3:17 talks about God, and I'm thinking if God rejoiced over his people Israel, he rejoices over all his people, all his creation. Zephaniah 3:17 says, the Lord your God in your midst, the mighty one will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you with his love. I like that. He will rejoice over you with singing. I'm trying to imagine. Ed, you've done a wonderful job of singing this morning. Brent, the piano. Can you imagine the God of the universe who created us? And that's a story all in its own that we can't fathom. God created us and everything around us, and we sinned. We separated ourselves from him. He came in the flesh, Jesus, to save us from that. And as we give our lives to him, we grow in him, we become more like him, And at some point, because we are waiting and watching, because we are serving one another, we're becoming like him, he will serve us. He will sit us down at his table and serve us and sing over us. I can't imagine what God singing sounds like. Will he sing the melody? Will he sing bass while he's singing the melody? Will he sing alto? Will he all of it. Yeah, God is capable of doing anything he wants to. I can't imagine what a God choir sounds like. One God singing to us, singing over us, rejoicing over us, and feeding us. In these troubled times, we need to be servants and stay focused on the role that he's given us in these end times. The spiritual gifts that he's given us are all for service. Service to the household and service to our communities. He will continue to give us opportunities to share with people in our community. If Jesus is coming soon and there are people who don't know him yet, this is a wonderful opportunity for them to share the calm that we have in the middle of the storm. The calm that we have because we are with our protector. And you know, the way we serve will probably vary. It will vary with our personalities. It will vary with the spiritual gifts that we have. And none of those gifts is too small. I remember years ago, Beatrice was a very committed person, committed to Jesus and committed to serving other people. And every Sabbath afternoon, she organized a little worship service for people in the retirement center. And B sometimes had a hard time getting people. She'd get someone to come and have a little devotional. She'd get someone to lead singing. She'd get someone to sing or play an instrument or something. And every week, that sometimes can be a challenge, but every week she just stayed with it. And I always remember visiting with her. After services, she'd go around from room to room to room and just visit with people and pray with them. And I went with her one time, and I remember some sweet little lady who was somewhere in her 70s, maybe late 70s, saying, "Oh," she said, "life is so tough, and you just wait till you get as old as I am, and you'll see." And I think B was 85 or 86, something like that. She just kept on keeping on, just doing what God had given her to do. It wouldn't be considered a big thing, but I believe in the eyes of the Master who's looking for servants who will serve him, people like B will be the people that he'll say, "You did a good job. Let me serve you." Father in heaven, thank you for being our servant. We ask that you'll help us to know better in this world of turmoil and problems how to be calm, how to stay close to you, and how to represent you and to serve others the way you serve us. We ask in Jesus' name.